Okay, so which variable, wingspan, or place of capture is categorical? Most people found out it was actually place of capture. Definitely no numbers involved there. All right, down the modal wingspan in millimeters. So make sure you put the unit millimeters in there. So it says in millimeters, so include the unit because they can be quite fussy and say you didn't put the unit, bad luck. But this is generally answered pretty well. 87% of students got this right. So we're looking at the modal, which means the longest or biggest one, and it's in the forest. So we look at forest and we look along there. It is 2. It's not 2 millimeters because if we read the key, 2 it represents the tens column, so it's actually 20 millimeters. There we go. Okay, so we need the information from the back-to-back stem plot, so I've put it in the bottom right-hand corner here. First one is minimum. I think most people got this right. Just to remind ourselves, minimum is this top number, smallest number. We can see the 18, that's that. But remember from this stem, the leaf goes out the other way. So that's 16. So hopefully no one wrote 61. That would be embarrassing. Now, for the next part, a lot of people have trouble with this. We're doing the grassland side. I'm going to write out the list of numbers to highlight where people made a mistake. So we've got 18, 22, 22, 24, 24, 25, 25, 29, 30, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 36, 38, 40, 43, and 45. That's 19 numbers, so we can say 19 plus 1 divided by 2. 19 plus 1 is 20, divided by 2 is 10, so it's the 10th position is the median. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's just a double check because there's two 30s there. I'm going to make sure which one is the median. That's the median. All right, now we hit an actual data point, so we don't include it in any of the other median calculations. And this is where people went wrong. So now that leaves us with these 9 numbers. So 9 plus 1 divided by 2, that equals 5. Let's just do that in a different color. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gives me that number. And same from the other end. See, 5 from the other end. It's 36. So our answer is 36. But a lot of people made the mistake of including the 30 in there and having 10 numbers, and that's wrong. This is not that 30 is not included. But if you do that, you end up with 10 plus 1 divided by 2 equals 5.5. And if you go like that, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you go from there and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So your 5.5 is here. And so a lot of people averaged that out and got 35. So remember, if you actually hit a number, if your median is an actual number, then it is not included when you're doing the Q3 or Q1. That was the common mistake. Okay, so we need to show that the moth captured in the forest that has a wingspan of 52 millimeters is an outlier. That's this guy down here. I just repeated the data from question C. So with all these questions, let's just think about what an outlier is. We've got to think an outlier is either above the upper fence or below the lower fence. Let's remind ourselves what an upper fence is. An upper fence equals the third quartile plus 1.5 times the IQR, and the lower fence equals Q1 minus 1.5 times the IQR. And that's because it's below the first quartile or above the third quartile. Make sure in all these questions that when you're thinking about a question and then get into that habit of thinking, oh, they asked upper fence this year, maybe they might be thinking lower fence next year. So that's why you should always be inclusive with your notes and look around that question for similar kind of questions. All right, let's have a look at our actual numbers. So we've got to do IQR, and IQR equals Q3 minus Q1. We've got those here. There's Q1, there's Q3. So our numbers are, and highlighter, equals 32 minus 20 equals 12. So our upper fence, we know it's the upper fence because 52 is at the upper end. So upper fence equals 32 plus 1.5 times 12. Half of 12 is 6, so 1.5 times 12 is 18. 32 plus 18 equals 50, and that makes sense. So that's our first point, is saying that the upper fence is 50, and we're going to say then 52 is greater than 50, therefore 52 millimeters is an outlier. Now this is a 2-mark question, so 1 mark is for this part and the other part is for this part. So make sure you get into the habit of writing out the full sentences with these things. Okay, this question wasn't answered very well. What they're asking for is we need to the wingspan is associated with the place of capture, but you've got to quote values of an appropriate statistic. Well, it's been talking about medians, so you need to quote the median. So for forest, median, that was 21, and the grassland, choices in grassland, median was 30. So that's your 1 mark. This is a 2 marker, so they're looking for 2 things. One is, did you quote an appropriate statistic? Mean is not allowed because it wasn't given in the data. I mean, you could have calculated it from the raw data, but really, just use the median you got given, all right? And you got to say, well, the medians differ. So you could say something, anything comparing the 2 things. So you can say there's an increase in median from forest to grassland. Something along those lines. And that's your 2nd mark for this question. So it says here, students who initially gave the required median comparisons and then went further by quoting comparisons of other irrelevant statistics were not awarded full marks. So think about this. If you're one of those people who tries to fool your teacher by writing more and more stuff, you actually lose marks for that. And that's a big warning. You know, warning, do not over answer. Warning, do not over answer. Yes. So you only had to do 2 things. This part, that was 1 mark, the appropriate statistic, which was median, and then just talk about this increase in median from forest to grassland. That's all you had to do.